In 2021, when we think of explorers, you might think of recent spacecraft landing on Mars by NASA and the amazing images sent back to Earth. Such events capture our imaginations and fill us with wonder about what it would be like to be the first person to set foot on Mars. Now let's go back over 100 years, where there was a race to be the first person to set foot on a cold, dry, windy place, and where it hardly ever rains. This is not another planet, but the other side of the Earth, the South Pole in Antarctica. Antarctica was discovered in 1820 by a Russian expedition, the next challenge being to reach the pole. The southernmost point on the Earth, the South Pole, is where one end of the Earth's axis intersects with its surface. Imagine the achievement of being the first person to stand in the centre of the world. This is the story of an Arctic explorer, Frank Browning, who didn't try to reach the pole, but did make a significant contribution to our understanding of Antarctica. Frank was born in Axminster and from a very young age grew up in Ellicombe, Torquay. It's just up the road from Torquay Museum, and he even played football for Torquay United. In his late teens, Frank joined the Navy and nearly 10 years later was hand-picked by Captain Scott for his Terra Nova expedition to the South Pole. One of the reasons Scott picked Browning was for his happy and positive attitude. Captain Scott is a famous Royal Navy officer and an explorer who led 2 expeditions to Antarctica, the Discovery and Terra Nova expeditions. The Terra Nova expedition ship set sail in June 1910 on a 10,000-mile journey to Antarctica. The purpose of the expedition was to be the first to reach the South Pole and carry out scientific research. While en route, Scott received a telegram that another expedition from Norway, led by an explorer named Amundsen, was also en route to Antarctica and aiming to be the first to reach the South Pole. The race, it would seem, was definitely on. The Terra Nova arrived at Cape Evans in December 1910. The rocky cape on the west side of Ross Island, Antarctica, is named Cape Evans after Scott's second-in-command, Lieutenant Edward Evans. Evans had very high praise for Frank Browning, describing him as the life and soul of every sledge journey I took part in. In January 1911, Scott set off with his team to be the first person to reach the South Pole. A second expedition stayed at Ross Sea Base to carry out scientific work. They collected geological, glaciological, and meteorological measurements. This means that they were studying how the Earth's glaciers were made and the climate in Antarctica. Antarctica is the coldest place on Earth, with temperatures dropping to between -57 and -90 degrees. After braving the weather to collect these measurements, in 2-hour observations, the team would be greeted by Browning. As well as collecting readings, Browning was also the cook. He prepared a mixture of different meats, fresh bread, and rhubarb pie, and he kept the expedition entertained. On the 17th of January 1912, Captain Scott and his team reached the South Pole, an amazing achievement. The team of 5 planted their flag to say they were the first. Oh no, second team to reach the South Pole, for a flag from Norway was in the ground before they even arrived. In an age before social media, television, or even radio, Scott's team hadn't heard the news of Amundsen's achievement. His Norwegian team had beaten Scott's by over a month, arriving on the 14th of December 1911. Disappointed, Scott and his team began their long journey home. A combination of exhaustion, weather conditions, and the effects of the cold meant that they never actually made it home. News of Scott's brave explorers began to spread around the world, and Scott's diary of the adventure became an international bestseller. The story's also been adapted for films and radio. Meanwhile, the Northern Shore party with Browning at Robertson Bay waited for the ship the Terra Nova to pick them up for the journey home. Because of extreme ice, the ship had no way to reach them and was forced to head back to New Zealand. The team now faced months in Antarctica until the weather improved with minimum supplies. This meant that Frank and the team were living in tents and had no materials to make a hut. Determined nonetheless to survive, the team carved an ice cave to live in over winter. A sack became the front door, and the main living room was so small you couldn't even stand up in it. Frank became an expert in preparing breakfasts. This was usually a mixture of porridge and seal or penguin steak. Now this diet made Browning very ill, and the team were incredibly concerned about his health. Team member Raymond Priestley wrote,
"One thing that must have contributed more than anything else to pull him through was his unfailing cheerfulness. He was a tower of strength to the party in this way."
The months were tough for the team, and because of frostbite, Browning lost 2 fingers on his right hand. They spent most of the time in darkness burning blubber fat from seals to keep warm. With no sunlight for 6 months, a strange diet, freezing temperatures affecting their skin, and low on supplies, not knowing the fate of the Terra Nova, the decision was made to walk 200 miles back to Cape Evans. This would have been like walking from Torquay to London. The journey was slow, and one day they only managed 8 miles. Frank was so ill he had to be pulled by other members of the group on a sledge, but he insisted on walking the final stage of the journey on foot. They eventually reached the safety of Cape Evans in October 1913. This amazing survival story of their walk to safety, one of the greatest stories ever, was completely overshadowed by the loss of Captain Scott and his team not returning from the South Pole. Frank survived the incredible journey and contributed valuable knowledge of the weather patterns and geology of Antarctica that are still used today. The Antarctic is particularly important in understanding the effects of climate change and global warming on Earth right now in this modern age. Members of the expedition were awarded the Arctic Medal by King George V in 1913, and Frank Browning's role is commemorated at a plaque at Torquay Town Hall. Frank died aged only 48 after a bout of pneumonia, his premature death likely caused by the hardships he faced in Antarctica. Torquay Museum remembers Frank's achievements with a display of items and photographs from the expedition in the Explorers Gallery, an acknowledgement to an amazing explorer. He will be remembered for many, many years to come.